these crimes against Dalits have been there for forever, almost. So I just see only probably the pattern, the location, the nature of the crimes are probably now changing from what I see.
And the accession definitely a part of it. The accession,
Yes.
because there is no other simple explanation for this, because it is being reported, it is being challenged, it is being, and as I said, the girls were actually going to school as different from earlier ages, where they would be working in the fields.
Yes.
So that kind of violence was not so visible, perhaps, not
Yes.
in terms of blood and gore, and etc. So that is there, and this new found and this new kind of tendency of even southern states. And there have been honor killing in the southern states, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, in AP also, in places where the grooms were actually stoned to death. That happened in Nizamabad. And Karnataka last year also we had heard of the father killing his daughter because she had married a Dalit. So this honor killing is kind of new because the girls are now interacting with people of other communities also. So that aspect is there, and the reaction you can see in Tamil Nadu, wherein they are actually forming alliances to stop intercaste marriages.
Yes.
How do you look at this whole situation?
Yes. We when I visited Dharmapuri and to understand this whole issue over there. One is like, yes, this case of this intercaste, the girl and the boy was coming out from that case there. But otherwise, if you see that whole situation there also seemed to be something else, something else which was underlying for that kind of violence.
Definitely,
very much well planned in advance. This could not have happened just like that.
Shakam is saying they had taken the procured petrol very in advance, and the trucks were engaged a month in advance.
Yes. So all this was a well planned thing. Also the way in which they have attacked. The first they have come and looted. First batch. Then after that, the second one was for destroying the property, destroying the source of livelihood. So, and if you see there that this colony there, they have really economically very well developed, like being close to Bangalore, Chennai, Coimbatore.
And it's not like the old hutments and
No. All, in fact, the Janta houses were which they had got, they're all broken, and then they have constructed very good houses for themselves. They all are into having small businesses, working in Bangalore and Coimbatore, Chennai, and they have really economically moved much ahead. In fact, the other dominant caste people are actually not so well off than these communities. So even when we were speaking to all of them, and the people, they also said that it is maybe one of that is maybe this reason, but more than that, they are not able to digest the fact that we are not taking like money lending, we are not taking money from them on credit, we are not going to their fields for work, and also they are not really able to digest this. But of course, this is being now used, by this Ramadas and others who are making these kind of really hate speeches and
I mean, the undercurrent was there earlier, the ground was there earlier, and he was only justifying it later.
Yes. And making use for himself.
And he was building social alliances to fight this cause. Earlier the governors wouldn't probably approach this 1 year, but they are coming together at least at the party or political leaders level.
Yes.
So that aspect is there, and so we can understand how people of different dominant castes come together in Haryana in this Khaps, or people of radically different regions, and they also come from UP and Rajasthan sometimes to hold these Khaps, I think. So how do we challenge this kind of hostile alliances? If the dominant castes feel threatened in such a fashion, so it won't be long before either they have to bow in, because this accession and expansion of mobility can't be stopped. But these kind of very bloody costs have to be paid, borne by the Dalits.
Yeah. I only like speculate, or I only like fear actually for the rebound, or what you say, back violence from us. How long we can take like this kind of attacks and this kind of crimes on us. Because when I was in Dharmapuri, after coming out from there, we were having a discussion with some of the other local leaders. So they were saying that this attack was carried out when all our boys were not in the village. They had all gone for coaching classes, some had gone out for exam, others had actually gone because it was before the festival, so some of them had actually gone to Bangalore, Coimbatore, or whatever they need to get money and all for this. So most of the men were not around in that village that time. So they were saying the young men, the younger men, and boys were not there. So that is why they were able to do this. So if our boys were there, this would not have happened. And now, immediately, he was telling, I remember that in all the houses around there, now we will also keep like a petrol bomb in our houses also to defend ourselves. So he was saying that when this happened here, the message was gone to all the nearby Dalit localities. So they were also ready for this kind of thing. So the violence again, they could result in more violence from our side also. That is something which always really comes to my mind.
So this is one aspect wherein the police machinery has utterly failed. They had enough indications, they had lots of signs, and they were cutting down trees and stopping even police vehicles like it. So they had enough indication, but even though there is a certain urgency and growing in Dalit consciousness that this has to be stopped, and as you said, kind of mobilization to take things into their own hands in some ways. And the laxity goes beyond certain limits. Even when it comes to deal with cases relating to upper caste women, the state machinery is, despite all the noise they make, they're still very lax.
Yeah.
So how to wake up the state to act in a more responsible fashion? How will that happen? There should be a matching response from the state. Even if not to the same degree, to at least some degree, but there is a total absence of. Sonia Gandhi came over to Dabra. She knew what was happening there, but she can't do anything to restrain Huda, or she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So and the political leadership is such that they are not inclined to deal with this as a serious issue, and they put up all the pretense over the Delhi rape issue. So how to wake up the political society, and also how to make it discipline the state machinery, especially the police, which is so which are lost its bearings. They don't seem to have any constitutional spirit in any sense. They don't seem to be working for a country. They seem to be working for some bosses of their own.
I don't know. I just think only
Most of this could be prevented. We understand all the time, every
Very
time,
true, very
especially the organized attacks.
Very true. Look at this case which I was telling you about Chandrakant Gaikwad, who was
Yeah.
murdered on February 13th.
Mm.
These boys had over a month, they have been saying to the SP that we are having this kind of threat from these people. They named them also and asked for protection. More than a month they have the records of the letters that they have given. Even the local, everybody knows about this. But they were refused protection, and finally he lost his life. Even other 4 or 5 boys also were just saved actually from this, and actually he was. So the thing that you're saying, the laxity of the police from Haryana to Maharashtra to Karnataka, everywhere across the country, I think this is what we are seeing in the police investigation officers, the judiciary,
Especially.
yeah. So it's like I just feel like it's completely like seeped, so deep inside every institution that they just don't really care, and I think that whole accountability is just missing completely. And I don't know, I also, it's such a huge question that you have asked, but I feel that that if there is a reversal of power,
Yeah.
that we have to get the power in our hand. When I say we, Dalit Bahujan, when we get into the power and to control these institutions, maybe that time that we can have something different, I feel. And that's why it's so important that we, and particularly Dalit women, to get into governance, get into political field is extremely important. I know that there's this thing, once you get into the system, then you are also sold out, and you also have to kind of toe the line, and you can't really. But I feel that if we are have a good, strong strategy within us ourselves, Dalit Bahujans, and work towards it, to actually shift that power, and with this kind of perspective and this kind of thinking, some change we can definitely bring. But with this current setup, I just feel so hopeless.
NCDHR and its work has been, remarkably on a very original path, wherein, was the first question we talked about, the surveillance aspect has been obviated in a way, it has been avoided by building a Dalit own alliance across the country and seeking solidarities with other marginalized people and human rights activists across the world. So how has this, could you tell us a little about NCDHR and your role in it?
Okay, from what I understand, NCDHR, I think now for more than 11 or 12 years, invested in building Dalit human rights defenders in the different states, that individuals, activists, lawyers, who are probably set up their own sangatans, their own institutions, and now independently, doing this monitoring and actually supporting the grassroots level work. So I think after that period of actually investing on the ground, NCDHR sort of moved into these 3 broad campaigns, which is one is the National Dalit Movement for Justice, which looks at the whole criminal justice system, enforcement of the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, and has been now in the recent past years has been working on amendments to this act in terms of making it more effective. And then the second one is the whole area of the related to budget and budget advocacy, economic rights, Dalit Arthik Adhikar Andolan. So that group kind of started looking at doing more research work budget analysis, kind of bringing out the diversions, the notional allocations in the budgets, and then initiating work on that, and also policy, that making SEP, TSP into a legislation. That is something that is now, I think from the Andhra experience now, they're actually looking at the central level.
And the Dalit Mahila Adhikar Manch.
Yeah, and then the Dalit All India Dalit Mahila Adhikar Manch is the where we are focusing on this whole issue of Dalit women. Two things. One is that within NCDHR, that to ensure that the whole focus on women is brought into every activity that is done. If it's budget work, also it needs to be looked at from women's perspective. If it's the civil and political rights, that also we need to bring in the gender focus. That is one area, and also supporting the state level work. So me and my team, we are based in Delhi, but most of our activists and other network partners are in the different states. Our presence right now is more in the north, Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, trying to see also how we could associate ourselves with other groups across. And also now I feel like the time has come to see how the Dalit women's movement could join forces, come together, because we first of all are very few in number, that there's a need that instead of having further fragmentation or outside movement, come in together and actually build some political spaces for Dalit women. I think that is an area that the new agenda for Dalit women work, I think we have to now prioritize and build on that.
Finally, we come back again to the National Adivasi and Dalit Women Congress. We have talked about them, how inspiring it has been, and rejuvenating it also. But apart from that, how do you see this, this Congress as a kind of, as a reflection of larger thinking happening across the country and the Dalit and Adivasi worlds? So how do you see the content of the things said here, the speech, the things shared, and the tales and stories shared? So what is your how do you gauge all this?
I think, as I said earlier, it was a good blend. I particularly liked the last two sessions of Dalit women professionals, the lawyers, the journalists, the management professionals, the media people, the girls in media, and then the students. I really felt that that was so powerful, and the energy and the perspective is so solid, and because I really felt like that's where our future lies, and how this Dalit Adivasi women's movement is going to be in the next 15 years, 20 years is really going to be determined by this group of young girls today. So I thought that was very fantastic. And also the session on the literature writings is one area I think we as activists also have not completely immersed ourselves into that and have kind of stayed away from it. So it was also a very interesting experience. And bringing in the denotified and notified tribes, women representatives, and the Muslim women's perspective, I thought that was very well thought of and very, very important. But most of all was the fact that it was all women and all our women, the Dalit and Adivasi women, and I think that was the real strength of this Congress.
Do you see any changes in the, you are actually belong to this generation more than to the older
I don't know, I'm in between.
So, in a way, the levels of confidence, the levels of education have definitely, gone up over several levels. Several, not just since even the 90s, I know 80s and 90s. So they might find new ways, new paths, new methods.
Sure, sure.
So let's hope they do really, and very kind of.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.